Y'all, the Donna Adelson trial has kicked off, and it is like an all-star cast of testimony, evidence, you name it. And we're going to talk about where we're at with the trial and what I think is going to happen in today's video.
Hey, 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 welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup at hey.
Now hold on everybody, let's do a quick sofa sidebar now. Keep in mind, ain't no cop, ain't no doctor, ain't no lawyer, ain't no therapist, ain't none of that fancy credentialed stuff, okay? Only credentials we got up in here is my sass, and this sofa. Now keep in mind also, I'm just giving my opinions on very public information, so do your own research, come to your own opinions, and drop them off in the comment section. And while you're down there, if you do like what you see here at the Sofa Squad, drop a little like, drop a little comment, drop a little share. It helps the channel out immensely. Now let's get edition. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. We got a sofa. We got a Paul. My name is Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, my name is still Paul. Okay. Now, like I said, the Donna Adelson trial is in full effect. I am streaming it on my podcast channel. It's down in the description below. So we stream over there, we watch it, we talk about it throughout the day and all that. So what I wanted to do is let several days get underway and then come and talk about it. While I'm streaming, I'm making notes on my phone. And so I'm going to read through these and just offer some commentary and thoughts on the things that I've seen as we've gone. So I am filming this at the end of day 6. Now, day 6 is from the very start, jury selection, right? So it's probably technically like day 3 of actual trial. So we left off with, I think the last witness was Katherine Magbanua. I say her last name wrong every time. And then like the sergeant who's going over all the text message evidence came up next, and he'll go back tomorrow. So that's where this ends, the video or whatever. So anyways, let's get into those opening statements. And I'm just gonna, again, read through my notes here and use them as talking points. So, you know, number one, they show what Donna looked like during the crime, which I thought was a very good tactic. And this is the state who did this. You know, she didn't do this, not the little grandmother you see over here, but this is what she looked like in this. And they explain the conspiracy to kill Dan. Okay, they're walking us through this. Now, if you're completely new to this case, to me, this channel, whatever, this is Donna Adelson. She's in trial. This case has gone on for over 10 years. Her son's in prison. Multiple people are serving life sentences over the case. And the victim in this case is Dan Markel. Dan Markel was married to Donna's daughter, Wendy. Wendy has not been arrested. She's not been charged. In fact, she took the witness stand and we'll talk about it. This was a custody battle that the state alleges Donna was basically the matriarch of the family, and they all orchestrated having Dan killed so that Wendy could move to South Florida and be closer to the family. So there's the 60-second overview. Okay, so her son had a girlfriend who knew people. The state's just outlining how Charlie, who's serving a life sentence, knew Katherine, who's serving a life sentence, and they could get people to do this. And then they tell Dan's story. And oftentimes when we see cases like this, where there's so much drama, there's so much trauma, the victim's name gets buried and all the layers of it, right? But his name is and was Dan Markel. And he was an FSU professor, a lawyer, all these things. He accomplished a lot. And he was obviously killed in a very untimely way. He was a young man and had 2 kids, the whole 9 yards. So they tell his story. Very little evidence, and cops think it's a hit. So when this first came out, you know, they were just like, you know, what's up with this? There's very little evidence going on of a break-in of this or that. And they immediately were like, there's more to this. Now, they tracked down the Prius. The Prius was the car that was used to facilitate the crime. And, you know, they tracked this down, and they're also going with what's the motive. So they're looking at 2 angles, and the state's outlining this in the opening, and both of these paths lead to Donna, the state claims. Now, what is the motive? Well, we just talked about that. They learned about the divorce from Wendy that was going on. They learned about the custody issue, and, you know, the Adelsons, especially Donna, wanting Wendy to live in South Florida, Miami, to be closer to them. Now, they go over Wendy's emails, and they show that Donna absolutely hated Dan, okay? And that she led the way to get Dan to relocate to Miami. Now, they go over this. I mean, you know, the absolute overreach is apparent. They show how involved Donna was with the divorce, and the judge rules in Dan's favor, and Wendy can't request relocation again or ever. So what happened is during this divorce, you know, again, the state's outlining all the things that Donna's doing. Like, we're going to get to Dan this way. We're going to manipulate him this way. We're going to bribe him this way. Well, the final kind of straw, if you will, that broke the camel's back is the judge in the divorce proceedings was like, nope, Wendy can't move down there. That's not going to happen. And so this was like a breaking point, if you will, because essentially in Donna's world, the worst thing, and she'll say this, the biggest and most important thing in the divorce is the relocation. This is the biggest thing. Donna makes Wendy in her life her personality. At least she did at this point. If Wendy has any amount of smartness, she has completely cut ties with her mother. But I doubt that. Now, the state will also outline how Donna would go to Charlie, her son, who is serving a life sentence now, to solve her problems, to solve everything, the whole 9 yards, right? And so they outline this whole thing because in this they'll discuss, and we'll get to it in a minute, that the train, as they'll call it, was Donna to Charlie, Charlie to Katie, Katie to Garcia and Rivera. And that's how this went. So they also showed Dan's emails about Donna and how, she was talking to the kids and saying horrible things about Dan in front of them, and the kids are telling him this. It was very toxic. It was very awful. And he didn't really want the kids to be around her, and I don't blame him. Now, they'll also outline the whole thing of, Wendy suggesting, her family had motive when Wendy was interviewed, and she threw that out there and, like, okay, well, maybe this or that or da-da-da-da-da. They'll also discuss the television that Charlie bought her and how this was her, alibi and all the kind of stuff. And the day of the crime, Wendy was having a TV fixed at her house that Charlie had bought her. And this essentially was her alibi. And we'll hear from Wendy's ex-boyfriend who was like, yeah, it looked like an adult had like smashed the TV. It was, sounds like it was beyond repair, but Wendy did this and, it is what it is. Okay, so they'll talk about the digital evidence and finding the Prius and who drove it, which of course we ultimately find out that in this, it was Garcia and Rivera who had gone to Tallahassee a couple of times, ultimately leading to them killing Dan Markel. Now they'll talk about how they ended up tracking everyone down, and through the Prius they find Garcia, Rivera, and through those two they're able to get phone records, this kind of stuff. They see Katie, and then through Katie's phone records and her evidence they say, oh, Katie's attached to Charlie. So they go down the line, if you will, reverse the train, and they follow Charlie all the way up to Donna and Harvey. We'll get into the Harvey thing here in a little bit. So bank records will show big purchases after the murders. Katherine, got Harvey's old Lexus. She had major cash deposits after that. The guys, Rivera, Garcia, they'll buy cars and motorcycles. Katherine got new boobs, the whole 9 yards, right? Now, months after, Donna adds Katherine to the dental practice payroll and paid her regular checks every 2 weeks. And we'll get into some of that testimony later as we get into the details of it. Now, law enforcement notices a pattern in communication, and it's Donna to Charlie, Charlie to Katherine, Katherine to the two hitmen, right? So law enforcement would do an undercover operation to test out the theory, and they listen to, Charlie and Katherine's phone calls. They do all this type of stuff, and they're basically like, you know what? This has taken years to do. Okay, so at this point, they're not talking about the murder anymore. They've gotten away with this. Everyone's moved on in life, right? And Dan Markel's gone, and they got their money, and Wendy got her kids, and they moved almost immediately and everything, right? So they're like, we're gonna do what's called the bump. It's referred to as the bump. And so what happens is they will have an undercover guy, Sammy, go meet Donna on the street and just blindly approach her and basically be like, hey, look, we know you had a problem in, up north. That was taken care of. You're taking care of Katherine, her people. Oh, Toto or Tato, or I can't remember which one it was, a name similar to that. They're like, is some of my people and he's in jail and you haven't taken care of him. Here's this paper. Here's a phone number. We need $5,000 cash. And Donna's kind of like, huh? What? She puts it in her purse. Well, their theory was, if this train works this way, we should see Donna contact Charlie, Charlie contact Katherine, and so on. And it absolutely works in this way. Now, there's also been phone calls where Donna will eventually reach out to the undercover, and then Charlie will too. And they're absolutely fishing for phone calls. I'll do a separate video, or not, fishing for information. So they outline this. So a big thing in the state's opening for me was that. Now, again, like I said in my opening, I ain't no lawyer. So I'm curious to hear from people who do have those kind of credentials, because in my world as a juror from the sofa speculation, if they sit here and absolutely show without a doubt, yeah, I mean, there's zero reason that Donna should know these people over here. How did these people end up with this phone number? And the bigger question is, if you didn't have anything to do with this and someone on the street ran into you and was like, hey, pay this money up. We know what you did. We took care of a problem for you. Why didn't you immediately go call the police? Why did you talk to 10 to 12 friends and your son Charlie, and he goes talk to Katherine about it, and then y'all reach out and do all? Why would you do any of this if you didn't know? And for me, that's a connection showing that Donna was part of the conspiracy. Okay, so here we go. Now, in this process where this takes place with the bump or whatever, Donna will, in the phone calls, when Donna reached out to Charlie, she's like, we got to meet in person. It's about us. She brings that paper, and then Charlie will have said paper as well. So when he meets with Katherine at a restaurant, they talk about it. There's an agent in there recording their phone calls. So at this point in time, the only public thing that's been made is the Prius, but yet Charlie seems to know details about the crime. Like, they know stuff about it. So you do the math on that one. Now, Charlie will go as far in this, the state will claim, to talk about, let's kill the blackmailer. I'll pay any amount of money, whatever it is. And he reminds Katherine about her being on payroll, etc., etc. And he's like, I'll pay anything and whatever. Now, after this meeting, Charlie will talk to Donna and be like, I got everything handled. You're all good, right? So why is there a need for that if she had nothing to do with anything? It was just this sweet little old grandmother. Now, Katherine will give Garcia this phone number. So soon thereafter, Garcia Rivera, they end up getting arrested and they will turn state's evidence. Now, keep in mind, Katherine was offered immunity and turned it down, is now serving a life sentence. She's kicking herself, right? Now, he will spill the beans and he'll be like, yep, I was hired by my co-defendants. That was them. We got paid $100,000. Katherine was the middle person. The money was stapled in a certain way. This will become important later. He spills the beans and he gets a sweet deal. Now, Katherine will end up having a couple of trials, and in them she'll lie, and she'll admit this on the stand in this trial, where she says, you know what, I didn't have nothing to do with that. The Adelsons went around me to the hitman, and she'll say, I thought I could get away with it. I thought I could get, I could beat the charges. And in this current trial, she will say, I lied because, her and Garcia were an item, and they were an item, and he's her baby daddy. And she was like, the death penalty was on the table, and I couldn't testify against him and put my kid's father to death. And I was like, you know what? I get it, right? I get that. It's grimy, the world they're in, but I get what she's saying. Now, part of what the state will outline as well in the opening is they'll say on the night of the murder, Katherine says that she goes to Charlie's to get the money, and that Charlie said his parents had just left the house. He was in this weird mood or whatever. Well, she'll end up staying the night there. And though the state will say, and we'll get to it later when she gets on the stand, that there was a couple of things there. Number one, the money was stapled together the way that the Adelsons stored their money. And number two, the money was damp and wet. And Charlie said that his mother had washed the money so that it wouldn't be traced. So again, this is all he said, she said, but it's not looking good. Now, the state will outline, yeah, you know what? Donna's son is in jail, in prison, I should say. And at his own trial, he was like, oh no, that wasn't us. That was these hitmen. We're being extorted. Come on, what are we talking about here? Well, we see how that fared. Now, the state will again in their opening outline within hours of the, Charlie, I'm going off to prison. Donna, the Adelsons, Donna and Harvey start planning their escape plan, which they should have done a little bit sooner. So they look up and start planning a trip to a non-extradition countries, and Vietnam is that, and they get a one-way ticket to it. And they will be apprehended at the gate moments before they're able to escape and flee the country. And Donna will be brought in, and hence her story starts. Now, her story starts there, but it also keeps going, because even in prison, other inmates are saying, yes, she was trying to bribe us, talking about make up evidence, do this, we'll do this for you, we'll do that for you, right? She doesn't know when to stop. Now, then the defense will do their opening statements. The defense will very much rely on asking everybody to remember Dan, and let's talk about him. And they'll say, you know what, we're going to call him Danny, because that's what everyone talked, that's what they called him. It feels very insincere. And after we just watched the state put up emails, text messages of Donna saying the most horrendous, vile things about him, the last thing you really want to hear is them trying to play a sympathetic card with Donna, representing Donna, like, let's call him Danny, he was so great. No, we didn't think he was great, apparently. We said horrible, vile things about him. We wanted to have him killed. They didn't say that, but I'm just saying, that's my own talk right there. Now, also, she would say, Donna helped the boys Skype to their father. Donna's normal, just like the rest of us, okay? She's going to the dentist office. And by the way, that's not her and Harvey's dental office. It's Charlie's, okay? It's like, one of the things that will come out is the dental office is basically, switched around on the way the business is set up to become Charlie's. Okay, and so it's like, no, Donna was going in there and doing the front desk and doing this, and she was writing the checks, but no, that was Charlie. These checks that Katherine was on the payroll, but she didn't really work there, that was Charlie paying. That was his money. Mom was just going there playing secretary. This innocent Donna, according to the defense. Now, one thing that will start laying the groundwork for the defense is they'll outline the day of the crime. Let's talk about it. They'll talk about Garcia. They'll talk about Rivera. They'll say following him all around this and that or whatever. And they'll say that, yeah, you know what? The state can 100% prove that Katherine set this up, right? And she'll say July 19th, Charlie, gives over $100,000 to Katherine and says the state can absolutely prove that. So this is one of the things that the state is going to do throughout this, and it's starting the opening statements, is blame everybody else. From Harvey to Charlie to Wendy to obviously, the people, Katherine, the guys, deflect. They can prove that, but they can't prove that Donna was part of it. And so the state is going to have to meet there in the middle to get the jury there to see how it all took place. And so that's what we'll talk about with the opening statements. Now, also with the opening statements, the defense was very short, very brief, very quick. And overall, this is flying by. Like, they're going through these witnesses very quick. A lot of them, the defense isn't even questioning. And if they do question them, it's very short, right? Now, the defense does spend a lot of time so far kind of like looking through notes, doing this, having to ask the judge to take a break to do this, that kind of a thing, right? It's frustrating. It's moving slow, but overall, the courtroom is going very quickly. And I will say this, I absolutely love the judge in this. And he is very, to me, he's like a big teddy bear. He seems like, very like stern. He runs this courtroom in a certain way, but he also seems very fair and very nice and concerned about what's the law here. And we're going to dot our I's and we're going to cross our T's, but we're not going to put up with any craziness up in here, right? And he keeps things moving. Now, one of the first witnesses on the stand will be Dan's neighbor who came over and found him. He heard the popping sounds, he heard the noise, and he goes over and he finds Dan shot several times in the garage, glass shattered. It's a very horrible scene. It's very terrible. It's very sad. And these are the like peripheral victims of this crime, right? He now obviously knows, oh my gosh, this very notorious murder, I stumbled upon it. And you never know in these things. He's lucky to be alive. What if he had gone over there when the guys were there? You never know what's going to happen when things like this are going down. And so he's very fortunate. Now, we also hear from a couple of other witnesses. David Sims, who's a retired sergeant with the Tallahassee PD. He had responded to the scene. Then we have a retired forensic specialist, and she gets up there, and part of her thing that she does is they'll show some of Dan's autopsy things. Well, Donna's over there the whole time, just crying, and literally carries this on for so long and into several testimony that the judge away from the jury is like, you cannot show any emotion. The jury has to make a decision based on whatever. And here's my thing with this. The jury has already seen the vile, terrible things that Donna has said about Dan and wanted to do to Dan. So to then sit over here and be like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. What did my son do to him? It's just like, how did we arrive here? Okay, this is so bad. It's so bad. It's so cringy. It's so performative. Now, they'll go to lunch soon thereafter on this first day of opening statements. When they come back, there's some back and forth about showing emails. And like these things will get to the point with the judge where he's like, do we need to send the jury home? Like, this should have been done in pretrial. And there's objections and this and that and jury in and out and blah, 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 blah. And it's dramatic, okay? But nonetheless, we will end up seeing these emails. And there's a very big reason why they don't want these shown. We'll talk about it in a minute. Now, we'll hear from another detective who gets up there who was the one that told Wendy about the situation, right? And I believe that there's a pretty lengthy interrogation, if you will, with him and Wendy. And she's overly dramatic, all this stuff, the whole 9 yards, right? So they'll talk about telling Wendy about the murder, her reaction, all that. Now, the defense will object. And again, they do this back and forth of sending them out, this, that, and the other. Now, when they do come back in, they will talk about some of these emails between Wendy and Donna. And then they will get to what's going to be referred to as the grandma motion. Now, this comes up and there's another objection that, again, judge sends the jury out. This happens all the time, right? Now, when they come back, they establish that this motion was Dan seeking to limit visitation with Donna because of the things that she was saying to the kids. Remember earlier how I said that she was saying terrible things and the kids were like, Dad, I don't know what they call her, I can't remember, but Grandma said this, that you said this about her, or whatever, said this about you. Bad things. So then the state will have the detective on the stand, go over all these emails, the awful things that were said about him, the bribes that Donna wanted to do, things that she wanted to manipulate, all the stuff, right? And they'll talk about money motive, how much money Dan was worth dead, which was a lot of money. Now, they'll also talk about going to the Adel Institute, that was their dental office, and being like, hey, we want to talk about this Katherine person, and whoever's at the front desk was like, I've heard the name, but I don't think she works here. Remember, she was on the payroll, so it's like, well, why is she on the payroll? You do the math. Also, with that, there's no history of her working there. There's no files, there's no nothing, only the checks that were written to her. Now, then we get a bombshell witness. We get Rivera on the stand. He, remember, cut a deal. He's in prison for this murder, okay? But he has turned state's evidence. So he got a 19 years concurrent with a Fed sentence. Now, he's, cooperated. He told on his co-defendants. He was hired by Garcia to take part in the murder. Katie enlisted Garcia. So remember, Katie and Garcia are kind of a on again, off again thing, baby daddy, baby mama situation. This is the friend. Now, he doesn't know who enlisted Katie. He says that the purpose of this murder was that Wendy wanted her kids. So he knew enough to say, he was like, that's my understanding, was that this lady, Wendy, wanted her kids, and that's what this is about. So this is where Wendy's name starts getting implicated in this, okay? So he refers to Charlie as Katie's side piece. He never had contact with Charlie or the Adelsons. He came to Tallahassee twice, he said. They had a piece of paper with Dan's address and picture. He said that Katie got Dan's travel plans from Wendy. Now, I mean, that was kind of bombshell to me. Katie will claim she never talked to Wendy about any of that, so who knows. He says he got about $35,000 cash for the hit. It was stapled into $1,000 stacks. Remember, that's how the Adelsons were claimed to have kept their money stored. Garcia bought a motorcycle and a car. He bought a motorcycle too. It was suggested with the state, they were just like, if you heard about these Adelsons, they had all this money and cash at their house. Would you have gone and done the murder if you knew this? Or what would you have done? He's like, we would have just gone and robbed them. We wouldn't have gone and murdered somebody. So, you know, it's kind of like nice. I mean, I wish they would have done the robbery instead too, obviously. But, you know, it's tragic to hear, because again, remember, Dan's parents are in the audience listening to them getting boob jobs and motorcycles and cars and all this for their son's murder. Now, when the defense does their cross-examination, they establish that it was Wendy who wanted him dead and to get her kids. He did not establish Donna or Harvey as having anything to do with it. So again, this is where you start to see the defense really come out and pointing a finger at, you know, Wendy, Charlie, and eventually they'll kind of, you'll hear Harvey's name out there too. Anyone but Donna. And from my unprofessional opinion, and just watching trials and whatnot, and I guess common sense too, you know, I look at it this way. These people aren't on trial. Wendy's not on trial. Now, who knows what will come later, whatever. Wendy's not on trial. None of these people are. So sure, if we needed to deflect the attention to these people, sure, go for it. It worked for Casey Anthony, right? They blamed everyone under the sun because it didn't. They weren't on trial then. You know, there's no charges coming up against them. You know, Wendy's been out for like how long? You know, she's never been charged with anything. So Charlie's already doing life sentences. Why not point the finger to try and get this person off? Now, Monday's testimony will start off with an investigator on the stand, and they'll talk about Wendy and Dan's divorce and how Donna was aware of all the things and the motions. I mean, Donna's fingers were in everything with this divorce. We might as well say it was Donna's divorce, okay? Now, they show motions and connections to Donna and shows bad things that she said about Dan, helping Wendy frame many of the motions and like doing edits to them, things of this nature. You know, she also signed these emails. So they're showing these emails where Donna's like, you need to put this in here, you need to edit this, and it's signed Love Mom, because one of the things that came up was, we don't know who was on the phone. We don't know who sent these emails. Well, it's clearly signed by Donna, a lot of these. So it is a thing of Donna is saying, boom, 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 love mom and dad. So there is ownership in there, and these things are horrid, okay? They made, you know, mention of posing the kids in front of like a Catholic school, switching their religion, dressing the kids up in rhymes with the name Yahtzee uniforms. Terrible, vile things, okay? And this is coming from Donna. And the word is on the street that I'm hearing from other creators and stuff like that are in the courtroom, that there were several moments where mouths hit the floor on the jury stand and eyes diverted to Donna like, WTF, okay? Like, what in the hey diddle diddle are we dealing with here? And one of the things they did too is they outlined a letter where Donna's like, you gotta do the acting job of your life, okay? Like, it goes on and on. Then, bombshell testimony. Wendy Adelson gets on the stand. Okay. Now, she's testified multiple times. We've seen her in interviews. She was Botoxed up. She had her little arch in her eyebrow. And like, this is the look Wendy does all the time. Like the breathless look. I don't know if you call it the 90s, early 2000s breathless model look. Almost like Vogan. Face frozen, right? She's like, I'm happy right now. You just can't tell. You know, and it's just like, oh my gosh. Now, before Wendy says anything, her lawyer comes out and does this whole statement that's like, look, Wendy is not under the type of immunity that she gets with the state for the defense. They're like, they had already handled this in a pretrial motion where it's like, look, I'm going to plead the fifth if the defense calls me up there, so we ain't doing that. Okay, we're going to do a statement. We'll call it good. I'm here for the state, and the state, by doing this, I have, and I forget what the name of it is, and I didn't put it in here, but it's a type of immunity where she can't be held, you know, liable or whatever for the things that she says there, but she can be charged, just not, they can't use it against her, things that she says on the stand. And she's done this for each trial, and this was a thing before it happened. So Donna gets real teary-eyed, you know, looking at Wendy like, that's my girl. She hasn't sent me any commissary, but I still love her. Okay, Donna's doing her thing. Wendy, call your mother. Put 20 on the books, Wendy. Honey buns ain't cheap. Okay, I tell you what, the honey buns ain't cheap now. Come on, Wendy, help your mama out. She took a major one for you. So did your whole family, right? She ran out to Texas, wherever it is she's living at now. Anyways, so they do that. Donna gets teary-eyed. The judges are again like, Miss Adelson, don't make me come over there. Don't make me put my badge down and turn it in and lose my job over this, because we're at that point. Now, Wendy's testimony is, in all honesty, rather uneventful. If you have followed this case through the years, she gets up there and does the same thing. Keep in mind, Wendy is a lawyer. She's an immigration attorney. So, she's not like a criminal defense, whatever, but she knows enough to know to be very middle of the road, to be very, I hate using it, but nonchalant. She does a lot of things like this, like, I don't remember. And if there is some kind of evidence, so for example, if they're like, and this would happen numerous times, but I'm making this example up, if they were like, do you remember back in 2017, you said this to your mother? And she's like, I don't remember. And they're like, okay, tab 5. And so they bring her this big book and they plop it down in front of her, and she flips through in tab 5 and she's like, oh, okay, it does say that I said that. Yes. And she'll go along with it. Now, to me, this is a tactic of, again, it's pretty smart, to where a lot of this stuff, Wendy is like, no, you're going to have to work for it, State. I'm not going to remember any of this. You got to show me where I said that. I want the proof. Because one of the previous trials, I felt like she got away with a lot of stuff like that. Like, I can't find this. And so Georgia really came prepared, like, tab 5, like we have a joke in the chat, like tab 5 now is our Sam. So there's numerous things. And Georgia would be like, did your mother say that Dan was and like some horrible explicitive? I don't know. Maybe, possibly. Go to tab 41, please. Right here. Your mother said that he was a demented little elf? Yes, okay, it does say that. Now, I made the demented elf up, but these weird little names like gibbers and all this weird stuff that they talked about Dan was very odd. Donna's derogatory statements to Dan were more what you would think of, like the F word and this and that. Wendy had these weird, odd, bizarre little things that she did with Dan. Now, another thing also that I found incredibly interesting, like mother, like daughter, okay? Wendy got to the point where if she was asked, did your mother say this horrible thing about Dan back in 1992? Yes. No questions asked, right? But if it had to do with Wendy being like, Wendy, back in 1964, did you think this thought about Dan? I don't know. Maybe. Where does it say that I said that? And she would have to look it up. So very quickly, I was like, oh, she's throwing mama under the train, right? And there was very much a vibe of like, yeah, mom didn't like him. Yeah, this, because she's not stupid, right? And again, she's not on trial. Do I think she did her mother any favors? No. Do I think she drastically harmed her mother? No. I think her older brother did that for them. Wendy was very generic. Now, I think where the damage will come in with Wendy is once other people took the stand and evidence has shown how vile Wendy is as well. And so now they know, think about it from the jury. We've heard that this is a whole murder for plot hire about this woman's husband to get these 2 kids. And she's on the stand acting very, I don't know. Maybe. This is why she drinks water. She has to have a ton of Botox in. I would have. If I was Wendy, think about it, and you had money, whatever. I don't know how much Botox is, but I just assume it's really expensive. And you were like, I'm getting ready to go testify and all these cameras are going to be on me and I'm going to be dissected. And I don't even know if I can end up getting charged for this later because if you're Wendy, your involvement in it. So you don't want to be showing emotion. You don't want to be doing any of that, right? I'd be like, put 10 syringes in my face, especially around here and here, so that I would look like the whole time. I would 100% be doing that too. So anyways, so there's that going on. Now, defense crossing, really there's nothing. They blame Wendy. So the defense gets up there and they start going through things and then she'll start roughing Wendy up, right? And so the defense's MO is basically like, you killed him, right? This was you. This was not your mother, right? And says that she led her mother on to believe, okay, there's that note. One of the things that they did is that the defense was basically like, look, whenever you got this part of this situation done and you knew there was a final outcome to a part of the divorce, and I can't remember what it was right now, the defense is like, you didn't tell your mother about this, and your mother was like this brewing cesspool of just Donna, and she let it kept going and going and going because she knew that like like this would overflow at a certain point, right? But it essentially rounds us back out to, then Wendy did this to do. It was so convoluted the way they were wrapping the story back around to, you were responsible for this, not your mom, like whatever, right? And again, of course they're going to do this. I don't blame them. I would have too. Then, this was true bombshell testimony. Rob, the oldest son, gets on the stand. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this, Rob is the oldest son. He's the most sanest in this family. Why? Because he ran screaming from the hills and moved away from them, right? He has nothing really to do with them. He married outside their religion, and apparently he was kind of like outcast. And you can tell by the way this family operates, Harry, Donna, Charlie, Wendy, in this weird toxic little circle, that if you were not going to be part of that, you could go. He's probably, well, not probably, he's very fortunate that he wasn't, because they would have wrapped him up somehow in this. Well, he takes the stand. He says he heard how they got sneaky about renting Wendy an apartment, and he kind of is giving you this insight look into how they operated and how they did this whole thing with essentially planning Wendy's escape. But why are you doing that unless you know what's going to happen? Now, he says that Donna planned a call to Dan right before he gave a speech, and her demeanor was that she was pleased. So what they were talking about is, this is just an example of how evil Donna is. Whatever this was, she was calling Dan to tell him something that was catastrophic news, maybe about the divorce or whatever. I can't remember specifically. But he was like, yeah, and I talked to mom. She was like, yeah, he was getting ready to go give a speech, you know, like for a crowd of people. And I called him, right? We planned to do it right before then to get to him, you know. And it's just like, you're hearing this and you're, again, the jury has to be like, what a vile human being. And remember, this ain't her husband. This is her daughter's husband that Donna picked out for her. It's one thing that is very clear, and it makes my blood pressure raise right now, is that Donna had no life. Donna had too much time on her hands, and she was entitled beyond the word entitled. So for Donna, she lived through Wendy, she made Wendy her personality, and she adopted Wendy's problems as her own, and she had nothing else going on. Donna strikes me as a type that she wanted to always be more important than she was, and instead of actually doing something worthwhile, she did stuff like this. Right? Imagine what this was like. And most everybody can relate to, whether you boyfriend, girlfriend, married, husband, whatever you got out there, you can all relate to family dynamics. And so especially like, think about awkward, you know, first meetings of parents and things of this nature when you're dating. So people can relate to being like, this is a nightmare mother-in-law. They're going to side with Dan when they just, the little bit we've even seen of it, he lived through it. Well, I mean, you know, he lived through it during that time until they killed him. What I'm getting at is, you know, he experiences firsthand how horrible they were. And honestly, he was probably trying to do everything he could to get his kids away from this vile family. And he probably realized it was too late. This is bad. These people are really, really horrible through and through. Now, on the subject of Charlie and his, you know, relationship with Wendy and all this, he said, I really don't think that Charlie was that invested in Wendy moving to South Florida, but Donna, his mother, really was. Now, he says when he got the call about Dan being shot, she was very matter of fact, meaning Donna. She said that someone told her that someone went to the door and was like, are you Dan? And then shot him. And this concerned Rob because he was like, how would she know this? Then Donna told Rob to not talk to law enforcement. And he's like, oh, I already did. And she's like, well, you don't know anything anyways. And one of the things I said in the chat room during this part is listening to Rob talk, I was like, this is what a completely innocent bystander sounds like. The things that were coming out of his mouth, where he was like, you know, I wouldn't not talk to the FBI if they knocked to my door about my brother-in-law being murdered. Like, why, what? You know, now the defense, and I probably put it in a note further down, but I'll go ahead and say it, was like, well, didn't, you know, an attorney tell your mother to not talk to the police? And that's what they were talking about. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. But again, he knows he doesn't have anything to hide. So he's going to try and help out. And he's already probably having suspicions about his family. He knows his family is cray-cray. Okay, he sees this. He also brings up something we've heard where, yeah, Donna, they were never curious about who killed Dan. This was not a thing. And neither was the rest of his family. Which would be, you would think that would be a huge thing, but they just never showed any interest in it. And after that, Dan's murder was not something to be discussed. Now, he says when he got wind that Garcia and Rivera were arrested, you know, he was like, okay, okay, you know, I'll wait for them to contact me, meaning his parents, whatever, he doesn't hear from him. He had an anniversary or something like that coming up a few days later, and that's when he hears from him. And he says that she didn't even mention the arrest until he mentioned it to Donna. And there was like no response. And he said, I had to say it a few different times in the conversation. And then all she said was, I gotta go, and she hung up on him. I mean, come on. And he says that she never talked about it again, and that was the last time that he spoke with her. So you know, right? You know when you're dealing with these people. I felt like Rob's testimony was incredibly damaging for Donna, because they've gotten up here and said all this stuff, and this is the son that has nothing to lose, nothing to get. He's just like, I don't even have anything to do with these people. You know, they're just, you know, and this is what they did. Why would he lie? Right? He was more concerned about Dan than any of them were. Now, again, when the defense got up there, they just said the thing about it was a lawyer who told the family not to talk about the crime and whatnot. Next up, we have a witness cop. They talk about the crime scene tape. And this was like the way that the street was and everything was blocked off. This is a huge thing because Wendy drove there, essentially. She claims she was like going to the ABC store for some little thing or whatever. And she turns around and leaves. She never contacts Dan. No curiosity about crime scene tape up near her kid's home. And even her realtor called her to be like, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but you know, the street's blocked off. Is everything okay? Wendy doesn't have a concern about the kids or Dan or anything, or why? She knows what happened, right? So this is this cop getting up there and he's like, yeah, usually for these situations, when somebody comes and pulls in, there's more of like oh, this is blocked off. Well, let me calibrate. Let me do this. And he said, now they couldn't say for sure that it was Wendy driving, but he said, I drove the same van that Wendy drove, and they showed pictures of it. And so that's why it stuck out to me. And he said, this van, it was very deliberate, like pull in, come, turn around, go. Like they knew what they were doing, speeding off, like not a question to it. There was no sense of, oh, wait, we can't go through. Okay, we can't. Okay, well, let's maybe turn here. None of that, right? And again, it would make sense because she's seeing what happened. Next up, we have Jeff Lacoste. This is another bombshell testimony to me, and this is Wendy's ex-boyfriend. Now, he had a relationship with Wendy. He believed the narrative that the Adelsons were talking about with Dan. Like, why wouldn't you at first? And he was like, well, I guess, you know, this guy's really bad to him. It was really horrible. He said that Wendy absolutely hated Tallahassee and wanted to move to Miami. Is all she talked about was how bad she hated Tallahassee. Second date, she's like screaming and crying over this, right? Mega red flags. Now, he said that with Wendy, any time in this divorce proceedings that there was a motion filed, anything, he said it was meltdown drama with Wendy and her family, just beside themselves. She was always canceling plans, doing this, doing that. Now, before we get even further in his testimony, what I'm talking about when I say he was damaging not only to Donna, but he, to me, blew Wendy's credibility, because while she got up there and gave this very generic, lawyer-informed testimony, kind of throwing stuff out there, this guy gets up here and gives this insight into Wendy of, yes, she's off her rocker. Something's not right with her. And it becomes very apparent. And again, it's just his testimony that, in my unprofessional sofa speculation opinion, he was being set up to take the fall or to be an alibi, some mixture of that. Now, he'll speak about, you know, hanging out with Charlie and Wendy and all this, and he'll talk about a night where they're at Charlie's house and they're like in and out of the hot tub and doing all this type of stuff. And he says at one point, Charlie bragged about having friends in the criminal world. Now, he would also talk about Wendy and around this time of the murder and all that, she was like this nervous wreck. Now, he's the one who also said about the television, remember Wendy's alibi? And he said that, you know, he saw it was broke and the screen was partially shattered. And he said he couldn't imagine that the kids were able to do that. He said it seemed like a grown person stood in front of it and smashed it. And he would describe, like, think about like your cell phone or, you know, the TV when it gets broken like that, what it does. He also mentioned a couple of times of going over to Wendy's where she was very erratic on things in addition to drinking. And it was very weird. And I think he ended up kind of leaving. Now, they would also go over some text messages from Wendy to Rob, her older brother, where she's talking about this guy and she's like, he's not Jewish yet, so he's like the secret boyfriend. Mom and dad don't know about him, but he's like, I have met Donna and Harvey numerous times. Like, they knew me multiple times. There was no secrets. That was very weird to me. Then he mentions this argument that he and Wendy get into, and he basically confronts her about seeing other dudes. Apparently she's like cheating on him. And he, you know, he was like, she's stringing me along. And this is where you start to see his side of the story, but there's something going on here. She's using this man for something besides love. He also would say that Wendy made a comment at some point about, yeah, the only way that I could ever relocate is if something happened to Dan. He even said that Wendy said at one point, like, you know, between you and I, Charlie's looked into everything possible to take care of Dan, including a hitman. He's talking about this one time they had this argument, and he's like, I basically just kind of threw my hands up and I walked to the car, and I got about 10 or 15 feet away, and when he's like, stop, and he was doing, collaborate and listen. I'm just joking. But he was going to take a trip the next day. And she's like, what route are you taking? When are you going? What are you doing this? And he was like, and it was so weird to me because I'm like, why are you asking me all these questions about my travel plans and where I'm going and what route I'm taking? And he says he gets an email after this, whatever, and it's basically like, I need a week's time, like no contact, let's take a break. Now, also he would say that this was 2 different times in the relationship of travel plans being made that coincided with the times that the hitman came up, of being like, where are you going? What's your travel plans? This, that, and the other. And one of the cars that was rented, they compared it to his car and it looked similar. So my opinion is the way that she was acting, that she was going to try and allude that it was him. She was going to make it out like he did it. He was angry with her, like whatever, like that was her ex-boyfriend. He took her out, whatever. But I think Wendy ended up getting her own family to do it instead. Someone was going to take the fall for getting rid of her little problem, and it wasn't going to be her. Now he says 10 days after the murder, they kind of reestablished contact, and she's telling him about, her and Charlie going to the celebration dinner or whatever, and that Charlie tells her something that makes her immediately vomit. Now he was a suspect, but he had the receipts to say, I wasn't there. Luckily his tire blew like on one of his trips. There's video of him somewhere, because trust me, the Adelsons would have this man taking the fall for them 100%. Now the defense essentially pivots everything towards Wendy, right? Everything towards Wendy. This is where they're getting more brazen and blaming her for everything. Now the next witness we have is an ex-girlfriend of Charlie's named June. She lives in Boca. She knows Donna. She was Charlie's ex-girlfriend. She met Donna several times, and she basically lived with Charlie at one point. She hadn't heard of Dan in the media, but Charlie told her about the situation. So remember, in this case, this case has gone on for years, right? So at a certain point, this is like on Dateline, 2020, these kind of things. Can you imagine dating somebody who you're learning about their life through watching one of the 2020 murder episodes? Completely bizarre, right? She was interviewed by law enforcement, and she said that the family wasn't curious about who killed Dan. The same narrative comes about like, yeah, they didn't seem to be, whatever. Now she says after the bump, remember the bump event that we talked about, everything with her relationship with Charlie changed. Now she says that Charlie didn't tell her about the bump, but she learned about it after the fact. And she said around that time, Charlie started not sleeping well. He was even more anxious than normal. He was depressed. She said then she learned Charlie was under investigation. And when she learned how the hitmen were paid, this kind of clicked in her mind about the stapled money. And she was like, wait a minute, that's how Charlie kept money, at his house. So she was like putting this all together. Now she said she saw on a TV episode how Charlie and Katie talked, and this part got very confusing with the defense and questioning her, and bless her heart, she got, she was nervous up there. She got turned around a few times. So what I took from it was that she was saying on a TV show she saw them portraying how around this time Katie and Charlie communicated, and she's like, Charlie and I never did this. Why don't you talk to me like you did her? And you can see all these things probably clicking into place, right? I mean, it's, it is what it is. Okay. So again, it's so weird to me to think you're dating somebody. I'm not saying this, against her, but it's just in general. And you're learning, oh wait, they're involved. Their family's in this big, scandal with a murder and this and that. And you're watching this. You'd have to start having these thoughts of like, did they have something to do with it? Now then Charlie's good friend, or former good friend, Ryan Fitzpatrick, gets up there. He says that Donna did not like Dan, right? This is a known thing. He says that, yep, Charlie kept stapled money. He says that Charlie talked to him about the bump, but had never mentioned it before, like being extorted or anything like that. So again, it's like, okay, so you're coming to me. Imagine going to your friends and being like, yeah, by the way, oh, I've been extorted or this, that, and the other over this murder. It's, again, with both Charlie and Donna, if you had nothing to do with this, there's no reason why you're going to your friends and talking about it. What should I do? Well, being extorted. Call the police. Why are you talking to me over luncheon? Are you kidding me? He says Charlie became agitated and nervous and guilty acting around and after the bump. And he says that when the others got arrested, Charlie's behavior worsened. And then we had a financial investigator, Mary, get up there. She went through all the personal and professional accounts for the Adelsons and the dental office. Now, she said that Rivera's bank account used to have lots of overdrafts, all this type of stuff. But guess what happened around the time of the murder? He got good with money. And during this time, he starts making big purchases and has lots lots of money. Garcia's money, he made big purchases but didn't have like a checking account or anything. Katherine's money, you know, she had a car, Charlie pays for it, all the work on it, you know, all these big deposits they're going through and showing this. And then, you know, yeah, Charlie got Harvey's old Lexus, Charlie pays for numerous things for her, and then they get into her receiving these checks from the Adelson Institute. Donna signs the checks, but she also did for everyone there at the office, so there is that. Katherine received 2 checks a month for about 2 years. Now, there's on the memo line, it says the date ranges that are like the pay periods for the checks. Now, the checks stopped after the bump happened. I wonder why. Did she quit? I don't know. So the defense gets up there and they talk about how old the Lexus was. They're like, basically, oh, it's just all a piece of crap anyways, right? And same kind of song and dance with that. Not much came out there. Now, the next witness is Clarissa. She worked at the Adelson Institute for 40 years, okay? She was Dr. Adelson's dental assistant and not Charlie, but Harvey, the father. She never saw Katherine working there at all. Okay, this is the big thing there, right? So Katherine gets on the witness stand next. Bombshell, we all want to hear. Who's this Katherine? Well, she gets on the stand to tell us. Now, Katherine in the state, you know, we'll go back and forth at first. She admits to lying in the previous trials. She admits that she wants to see her kids again one day. She admits to being the middleman between Charlie and the hitman. And she says that Charlie solicited her. She said Charlie brought up the idea around Halloween of 2013. She eventually learns about Dan, that Charlie's family was going through it with Dan. So she's like, you know, I learned about this guy, Dan. I'm hearing the story. The Adelsons all had the same story, right? It was like Dan driving them crazy. Now, the way it's portrayed, and this is what I think happened, is when I say the Adelson said this, it was Dan was driving Donna crazy. Well, Dan was divorcing Wendy and going through something with her, and in turn, Donna made it her issue. And then by then, she made it everybody's issue around her. And I think what would happen with Donna is you had to deal with Donna's drama to get her to shut up. And then she would end one drama and go on to the next. And so this was not going away. So in turn, everyone's life was being made miserable by Donna over this. Now, Katherine says she met Donna like maybe once or twice at the dental office when she went in to get fillings and teeth cleanings and whitening and stuff like this. Now, she said that during discussions with her about the setup, he would make calls to his mom, meaning Charlie would, but he would like step out of the room and then come back in. So she didn't hear things, she didn't say things, but she knew it was Donna he was talking to. Now, eventually she learns that this will be a murder. She says one day she goes over there and Charlie gives her an envelope. She said that he wore gloves to seal it, all this type of stuff, and she gives it to Garcia. She does not look in this. So she said in her world, she thought this was supposed to be like somebody needs to be harmed. That's what Charlie had said. So she didn't know it was in this. Well, so she goes and gives it to her baby daddy, Garcia. Okay, and so it's almost like she's pivoting herself as I didn't, you know, I'm just the middleman here. I'm just doing this. She gets the money from Charlie to give to Garcia to make the first trip to Tallahassee. So like they go up there, so they need a few $100 and she gets that. She confirms being on the payroll and says it was payment for her role in the murder. She talks about meeting Wendy. She says she did not talk about the murder or Dan's schedule or anything like that with Wendy. Although remember back to her co-defendant Rivera, who says that they got that information from Wendy, but he might not know that. He might just be like, I know it was for Wendy, but she might have gotten that from, I don't know, right? This is where this gets a little bit like, what's the jury pick up and put down and all that. She says when she went to pick the money up, Charlie was super nervous. This is the money for the murder, right? So the work's been put in, where's the money? She goes over there to get the money. Charlie's very nervous. He says his parents had just been there. She says that he gives her a Xanax, he takes one, she stays the night. Next morning she gets up, Charlie's like, the money is in your trunk. She does not look at the money, she does not question this. She basically drives to wherever Garcia was. He gets in the car, he gets the money from her. She says that she got her money later when Garcia basically broke her off. Like, this is what you're getting, it's in the bag. She says it was in a plastic bag with money in a Ziploc bag. She said the money was stapled together, and she says a couple of days later she realizes the money was wet and moldy. And she mentions this to Charlie, and Charlie said that Donna physically washed the money. Says that Donna signed all of her paychecks. So they go back to talking about who wrote the checks and did all this, and she confirmed she had Donna's the one signing off on these. She says that she met with Charlie after the bump at this restaurant. Remember, they're being recorded by an undercover at the restaurant. He picks her up, he turns the music up, and he tells her about his mom being approached. And it's like, you know, hey, look, you know, this is what's going on. They go over to lunch. Charlie goes over all the stuff. She tells him to contact the phone number that was left. Again, I'll do a separate video with those phone calls. And Charlie basically is like, somebody's either extorting us or it's the FBI, okay? This is why Donna and Charlie both called the phone number from the bump to fish for information. You wouldn't do that if you didn't have anything to do with it. There's no reason Donna should have called the phone number. There's no reason Charlie should have called the phone number. So it's quite clear that Donna goes to Charlie, Charlie goes to Katherine, Katherine says to call it, Charlie goes back to Donna, Donna calls the phone number, and then Charlie calls. It's very obvious how they're tied in with this. There should be no reason for this. Now, she says that Charlie never said that the murder was to benefit his mother or his sister, but that she knew that it was. Now, the defense does their cross-examination. They talk about obviously her lying in previous trials, and they go over that and they try and ruffle her up a couple of times, but she held her own. And then we get the next witness up, and this will be the last witness of the day, and he's going to finish up tomorrow, so we'll pick back up in the next video I do. But this is a sergeant who's going to go over basically like for what I call like the forensic digital evidence, so cell phone records, GPS, stuff like this. So they go over Dan's movements and the Prius movements and kind of aligning all these together. Now, some of the bombshell stuff that comes out is from Harvey's call records. There's a call to Garcia's phone. There's also another frequent call from Harvey to Katherine. Then Charlie's phone number's in there. They go over this. Now, with Garcia being in there, we talked about this in the chat room after the fact, and drop it in the comments if you remember or know. It sounds like there was an argument that took place and Garcia looked up the phone number and got the wrong one and got Harvey's and called and left a message there, and then Harvey called back. So nonetheless, people who should not know about each other are in each other's phone numbers. Now, it seems like Katherine's phone number is in there, but we don't know, is Charlie using Harvey's phone? Is Donna using the phone? What is the reason for this, and why are these numbers in there? It seems very suspicious. Now, they start talking about the evidence of the motive to kill, and this is where they'll start going through all these emails that Donna and Wendy went over, sent between the two, and the vile things that were in them, and just really piecing together motive. This is what was here. It was a huge deal for this relocation to not happen. It was a last straw, and then it didn't happen. So they were desperate, and they did what desperate people do, and that results in Dan being murdered. Now, that's where it left off. So let's talk about some theories real quick before we finish off. Okay, so I go back and forth. Clearly, I followed the case. I have a bias. There's no way I would be on the jury. So we're speaking from that perspective, and like I said, I'm not, a lawyer or anything of that stuff. For me, this is the biggest thing right here. Number one, the bump. Donna is the only one that started off with the phone number. Phone number makes its way down the line and back to Donna, at which point she calls the bump. There is no reason why these other people should have any knowledge of this. So this proves the state's theory that this is how the conspiracy set up, and this is how it works. Donna to Charlie to Katie to Hitman to Hitman to Katie to Charlie to Donna. And there was that. Donna calls the undercover back. This is the wrong thing. Go get money from the police. I'm not going to give you the $5,000. Now, Charlie's a little bit different. When he calls, he's like, well, let me make some phone calls. So you can tell when Charlie talks to the undercover, Charlie's more like, this is bad, right? So I think that's huge. I think Rob's testimony, because he comes off as the most sane person. You don't have any witnesses getting up there saying horrible things about Rob. He moved away from the family. He keeps his distance. And he's sitting here saying, yeah, my mom wouldn't even acknowledge Dan's death, or that they caught the people doing it. In fact, they seemed nervous over it. We never talked about it again. Nobody was curious about who did it. As far as the jailhouse informants go, and the co-conspirators is really what they are now, not jailhouse informants, I should say. I feel a couple of ways about that, because I did feel like Rivera was pretty believable. At this point, doesn't really have anything to lose, like by getting up there and making stuff up, right? He already got a deal, probably hoping for an even better something. So I believe him. Katherine, there's a couple of things I question. Some of her stories a little bit like, I go back and forth. One thing was about the money. I didn't look what the money was. I didn't know what the money was. I just, I spent some of it. So you couldn't even come up with a figure to say, I think it was maybe 20,000, 30,000, whatever. Maybe she didn't remember, it was a long time ago. But nonetheless, it seemed a little bit odd. The inconsistencies between Rivera and what Katherine says they did and didn't do. So for example, Rivera, oh yeah, Katherine got the schedule from Wendy. Katherine's over here. I never talked to Wendy about any of that stuff. My thought process is, why would she lie and not implicate Wendy? In fact, it would make her look better if she implicated more people. So the opportunities that Katherine could use to lie to maybe make her case look better to get a favor later from the state, she doesn't take. So that part right there, I'm like, Okay, everybody has different motivations. Overall, I believe what she's saying. I believe the money was moldy. I believe that they were there before that. I believe that Donna washed the money. I can believe that she didn't look in the envelope. We talked about this in the chat, and my theory on her saying, I just got the envelope from Charlie and handed it to him. I felt like her and her baby daddy Garcia were on again, off again, probably toxic. She's having an affair with Charlie. She's doing this, she's doing that. She knew that Charlie was the ATM. And then he came up with this grimy situation that she needed money, she needed this or that. So this is where she was like, well, I'm going back into my little world with Garcia, and he's got his little friend. I didn't even know who Rivera was. In my viewpoint, the situation with her and Garcia was probably like, I'm the dude, I'm running the show. You don't concern yourself with what's in that letter. The less you know, the better. So she takes it and gives to him. Same thing with the money, where she's like, look, Charlie said the money, I'm not touching it. Whatever. He's taking the money. He's going to break her off. You're getting this from this. Her saying she doesn't know what was in there, I think that's odd, but who knows? Maybe she didn't want to have much to do with the money at that point. She just wanted to spend it. I don't know. She was also benefiting on her side piece of getting, money from the Adelsons left and right. She's getting cars, she's getting boobs, she's getting, money through the business. She had all this stuff going on. So that being said, where do I think the case stands? If I remove my bias from it, because I do think Donna's guilty. I think 100% Donna absolutely knew what was going on. I think Harvey did too at this point. We're getting into some of the bam moments from the state of, we need bam moments of directly tying Donna. And I think the sergeant that's on the stand is bringing some of those. He is showing this motive. He is showing phone records. And it's like, oh, Rob brought some of those moments. But again, there's a lot of hearsay. And so depending on what the jury is made up of, how some jurors are like, no, I needed to be there myself and see the crime committed before I'll convict. And other jurors are like, if you hear a bunch of stuff on the roof sounds like rain, you go outside and the ground's wet, it probably just rained. Okay? Let's put two and two together here. So some of it's going to depend on the jury. Like I said, some of the things that I'm hearing people say from inside the courtroom are that mouths are dropping, eyes are gazing at Donna. It's Donna's very slick, but also not in the way she runs her game. She is very manipulative, and probably keeps everyone around her in absolute chaos and turmoil because she doesn't have anything better to do. And this was her ultimate thing. I think she was thriving. When all those motions were coming through in the drama with Wendy, she was thriving. This was her moment to shine. This was her time to be important and to save her baby girl. Okay. So that's it. We'll let some more testimony get through, and we'll do another kind of opinions and talking about it and all that. And that's it. So let me know. I'm dying to see what you think about the trial so far. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. While you are down there, drop some of these off. Drop some little sofas for me, for Roscoe, for Bo and Luke, and for you, the Sofa Squad, who makes this channel possible. I'm very grateful for you, and I appreciate it. And until we gather down in the comment section to do all that stuff I just talked about, bam, I'll talk to y'all soon.
I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Roscoe on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad. Sipping from the cup that hey, come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.